Okay, so we're going to learn the Maimer. Al Kein Karu Layamim Eila Punim Al Shem Hafur. This is a Maimer that the Rebbe said in Tafshin Yud Gimel. And we'll start with the Pesach Dover for the Maimer, because this was a very special Maimer. The Pesach Dover says as follows: "L'kratzmei punim abayim lein l'teva hinenu mitzim la'ol es hamayim devaskal kein karol yom mele punim geimer shamer kvekdish es admon shlita beis fadas to punim heitashin yud gimel." And this is, you see, hamayim hasheni. It wasn't very common. This was the second Maimer shenemer beis fadas to punim b'shana ahi, which was said in that punim fabringen. Shamirasa, yeah, Shamirasa heisak shura kenira. They're writing Shura Kenida, but the Rebbe looked over the entire kuntas that they gave in, including the Pesach Davar. They would put a date in many cases. So Al Kolpanim, this Maimer was connected, probably it says, with the events that occurred during that period of time, until the downfall of the governor of that country. That country is a reference to the USSR, and the Moishel was Stalin Yamachshemay, Shayatzer Yisrael, who was a tyrant to the Yidden. Fishevinu b'shaitem asip shasip kvektish admon shlita kakdamo v'smich slamiris maimer zeh al dvar heros kvektish admon shamish masid mitkufas samapechel achrei mapalas shalakesh. It was understood from the story that the Rebbe said before saying that Maimer. I'm going to get to the story that happened in Russia. So let's say what was going on over here. So for those who don't know, once upon a time, there was the Soviet Union, the United States of the USSR, the United Socialist Republic, the United Socialist Soviet Republic, the USSR. And it was founded with very high ideals, to bring justice to the common man, and to end the order where you had a king and everything belonged to the aristocracy, and the common man didn't have a choice. And some people who they say many of them were Yidden, came up with these new ideas with Marxism. And in whenever it was around 1920, right? So the Soviets came and they established the government over there in Russia. Shortly thereafter, Lenin, who was the leader of the Soviet party and the leader of the Soviet Union, died, and he wrote already in his diary. He wrote that he was very afraid that if there's going to be somebody who's very energetic and very capable, very skilled in organizing, and very ambitious, that he could take over control of the whole party, and then the whole idea of communism, which was a bad idea in the first place, would get even worse, because it would turn into a dictatorship. And that's exactly what happened. Stalin Yamach Shemai took over, and his evil was just, he's responsible for the death of more people than Hitler, at least. 60, they say, yeah. He was ruthless, and there were millions who died. We were just talking about the Ukraine. There were millions who died in hunger in Ukraine. He would ship all the food out of the Ukraine. It was a man-made famine, and
he stopped the railroad from entering Ukraine.
No, it took the food out of Ukraine. Ukraine has very fertile ground. It took the wheat out of the Ukraine and brought it to Russia. Millions of people died there, and he killed out countless. I mean, every institution that he had. What did it start with, the NKVD or with the GPU? I think first it was the GPU.
No, but the Pilgrim was NKVD.
I know, because the GPU was very short-lived. Each time he gathered around himself a band of murderers, to head the GPU, and then the NKVD, and then the KGB. Each time he would kill the entire leadership every few years. This included the Evsexia. It's hard. I'm just trying to give an idea of the tyranny of Stalin and of the tyranny of the USSR under Stalin. It's hard to imagine how bad it was. You send people to Siberia for 10 years, for 20 years. Every citizen in Russia was pashut afraid to talk to his neighbor, to his brother, and even to his father, because of the blackmail and the threats that the KGB created. Everybody would maser on each other. It became a society.
Thousands of Yidden came to America in those years.
Mm-hmm.
They went away.
Yeah.
those years.
Yeah, of course. My father says, hello, Rami. My father says that one of our relatives came out of Russia somewhere in the 70s. And my father was parked in front of 770. My father knew some of the police officers over there in front of 770, and he was parked in the car with this relative of ours who came out of Russia. And one of the police officers saw my father, so he started walking towards the car to say hello. And this guy who literally, my father had just picked him up from the airport. He's shaking. My father looks at him and says, "What's the matter?" He really points, a police officer is coming. It's hard for us to imagine. I mean, I could say from my grandparents and even from my parents and his siblings, my uncles were born in Russia. My father was born on the way out in France, but you just didn't say anything. Everything, even the simplest thing. What time are we leaving? Shh. You know, it went over not even one generation. Not only one generation, perhaps two generations. It was unimaginable. The terror in Russia was unimaginable. There was the Great Terror of I think of 37 in the 30s. So, and then finally towards the end, he hatched a plot. This is in 1953. He hatched a plot that was called the Doctor's Plot. I forgot what it's called. It's a well-known story where
It's almost like COVID.
So, not as bad. Approaches the plot of COVID. In a way, you're right, by the way. But it's now is not the time. And the idea was that he was going to accuse a group of, I think, 12 or so Jewish doctors of plotting to kill him. And through that, he would instigate riots throughout the entire Soviet Union against the Yidden, and it would possibly be a murder of who knows how many Yidden, Rahman Litzlan. During Purim, Purim of that year, the Rebbe at the Farbrengen had, the regular seder of a Farbrengen, but then suddenly you were able to tell a difference on the Rebbe. I heard this, first of all, there's a video of Rabbi Yoel describing the Farbrengen. I also heard this from my uncle, Rabbi Shlomo Majeski, that the Rebbe started, things changed. I can't remember the details, but the Rebbe's whole demeanor changed. And they said the story that after the revolution in Russia, there were going to be elections because for a period of time the Soviets didn't take over. There were different. There were the White Russians and there were other groups, and there were elections to be held. And the Bishop said that the Chassidim should vote. So it was a Chassidish, a Chassid, a Emes Chassidish Yid, and he didn't even speak Russian. But the Rebbe Rashab said that they should vote. So he went, he went to mikveh, he washed Negelwasser, he put on his gartel, for real, he put on his gartel, and he went to the polling station to vote. And when he was there, he heard everybody screaming "Hurrah!" So "Hurrah" is a cheer in Russian. Hurrah! It's a cheer in Russian. This Yid, Pasha didn't speak a word of Russian, and he was sure that "Hurrah" means to say that he's bad. So he joined everybody. This is what you do by the polling station. So that's what he did. He joined everybody, and his kavanah was "Hurrah, hurrah, hurrah." I'm pretty sure by the Farbrengen, all the Chassidim screamed out "Hurrah, hurrah, hurrah." And then that was the story that was referenced in the Pesach Dover. And then the Rebbe said this maimer. During that time in Russia, there's actually a documentary that I saw once that Stalin didn't leave his room. He had a room. Everybody, his closest deputies. His closest deputy. No. But I'm saying more than usual. He was in his room beyond the time that he was supposed to be in his room, and the people around him were Pasha terrified, and they didn't want to go in and check up on him. And then a little bit more time passed, and they started saying maybe he Pasha had some sort of a medical event. And his top advisors and ministers spoke amongst each other, and they said, you know what? They were so terrified. There was after he died, they put up somebody to be the head of the KGB. So the new whatever you call him, the new head of the Soviet Union wanted to choose somebody. They wanted to redo the KGB. They were all living in such terror from the KGB that they wanted to remake the KGB. That should be less terrifying. So they called one of the top ministers. The head of the Soviet Union called one of the top ministers in the government, and he told him, "Listen, we want you to be the head of the KGB." So he answered him, "Comrade so-and-so, are you crazy? With all due respect, are you crazy? I'm afraid to walk in front of that building." That's how big the terror was. So these people were so terrified that they said, you know what? If he suffered some sort of a medical event, let's better not go. Let's not find out. Let him suffer and die, and that will be the end of him. And it was a few days. I think it was a few days before they went in to check on him, and he was taka dead. And then it was a few more days until they let everybody know. This all happened, and he's still there. This all happened.
Didn't they put him like in mummify him or something?
Yeah,
I think they kept him.
Preserved him.
No?
I don't know, but that was the result of the Rebbe speaking this Maimer. Okay, so and after that, they stopped. They stopped arresting people en masse. And after that, Yiddishkeit was able to breathe a little bit. People were still afraid. Hillel Zaltzman writes in his book that he wonders that maybe they could have done more. Everybody was so terrified because of the tens of millions of people who were killed and families destroyed and tortured that they were afraid to do anything. He says maybe we could have done more, but they didn't want to touch it, even though they weren't arresting people anymore. Anyways, they were arresting, but not in the way they weren't sending them to Siberia and so on and so forth. Many Hasidim left Siberia at that time. So that the Rebbe accomplished with this Maimer. So we can understand that this Maimer is a very special Maimer. Purim is also a very special Yom Tif. It's a very strange Yom Tif if you think about it.
When he died, they pardoned everybody, right? Like,
they pardoned many people.
Like
Reb Lezer Nanis was let free. Yeah,
but they let everyone out.
They let him, yeah, it was a slow process, but everyone got out. So that was this Maimer. They ever did that with this Maimer. They ever did it with Torah and with this Maimer. And Purim, like I said, is a very strange Yom Tif, even by the standard of Judaism, which you have many strange things in Yiddishkeit if you think about them. Purim is the strangest of them all. It's amongst other reasons that it's first the halach in Shulchan Aruch that somebody has to drink and get drunk, which is bechlal not a Yiddish hanhaga, and it's written against it in countless places. And not stam get drunk, but adelo yoda, until he can't tell the difference between Arur Haman and Baruch Mordechai, which is the point of the whole of the entire Purim. And we're saying that you have to get so drunk that you can't tell the difference. And of course, this apparent strangeness of Purim comes from the fact that Purim is very special and very high. In this Maimer, we're going to learn a little bit about what's so special about Purim Bezos Hashem Yisbarach. So let's get started. Kuf Pei Tes.
Turn the other side of that page. No. Other side of the first page.
Yeah.
No, you want it on there.
They shouldn't lose control of themselves in case they drink already. Mashenkin Purim. Right. So like Yankel is saying that you see in the Rambam writes, we just started the Rambam again. The Rambam writes that Bezdin would send out shluchim, or I forgot the exact word that Rambam uses to describe them, to all of the different places where people might be gathering on Yom Tovim to make sure that nobody loses their mind and does anything inappropriate. Why? Because on Yom Tov people might drink a little bit more wine, and therefore there was a chash that something not well might happen. So you see the general attitude bichlal in Yiddishkeit. When it comes to Purim, you say the opposite. You say the complete opposite. How one should behave. B'peil mamish, you should ask your qualified mashpia before you do anything. But the chiyuv and shulchan aruch is there.
But the Bible has the minute that you don't drink on Purim, they do mitzvah, at least ever since the 70s.
Lubavitch has the minhag. Lubavitch has the minhag.
Not as though you do with the Litvish Gelt.
Lubavitch has the minhag that by the Suda, the Rebbe's Suda, for example, Purim Tavshin Chai, where the Rebbe said a lot of L'chaim. It was after Shkia. It was at night. And over there, the Rebbe said, Chavinish Lipsumi. That's how the Rebbe started off the bringing, saying that the Chiv of the day, the Aveda of the day, a very interesting sikha, is to drink. So therefore, everybody should drink, Peil Mamish, and they gave L'chaim to many people. That started after nightfall. In other words, after you did Miftayim and did all the things you have to. So the Chiv continues also to the night, and that's in Lubavitch Taka when those who say L'chaim say L'chaim. This is the second Maimon.
By Lubavitch, they are Indian of drinking the simplest.
It's different. The Rebbe said also that there was once a story where the Rebbe gave a guarantee to people if they would do something, This was on Simchas Torah, I think, and there was a certain chassid, but they had to accept the deal. I can't remember what it was. It's not the famous story with wealth, and there was a chassid there who missed it, and or he made the wrong. He didn't take on the deal, and he came to the Rebbe afterwards, and he asked the Rebbe. He said, he thought about it. He realized he should have, and he wants to do it. So the Rebbe said, "Purim Simchas Torah and Purim stein mir hecher." Simchas Torah and Purim, the Rabbeim stand higher. So you see, it's also like we'll see later in the Ha'ara that Purim is the only Yom Tov that's not going to be batal. Kol hayamim tovim hasidim libatal. Besides for Purim, v'zichron le'yasuf mizarim. So Purim is very, very special. It's let's get into it. Kein Karu al Shem Hapur. For this reason, they call these days the holiday, the Yom Tov of Purim, after the Pur. What's the Pur? The Pur is the Geirel, is the lots that Haman cast. According to what it's known, that the name of everything indicates its concept, its idea. Move on. This that Purim is called Purim, named after the Geirel, the lots, is because the main part of the Yom Tov of Purim is the Geirel. The Tzarech Lahavin asks the Rebbe, what exactly did the Geirel contribute to the Nes and to the Yom Tov of Purim? The Tzarech Lahavin, this wasn't the main part of the Nes. I can get into it. You could say, we'll see soon a little bit also in the Pnim, why maybe it had something to do with the Nes, but certainly it wasn't the Ikar Nes. Well, the Rebbe adds furthermore, the Geirel shehipil Haman, the Geirel that Haman drew, the Geirel that Haman drew was part of the Gzeira against the Yidden. Haman and Rasha cast lots in order to destroy the Yidden. So this is part of the Gzeira, part of the decree against the Yidden. From this, that we call these days Purim, named after the Geirel. That's the primary Nes of Purim. To the degree that the Nes of Purim is named after the Geirel. So, what's the understanding of this? We could have perhaps answered according to what it says in the Gemara. Yeah, for those who listen to the Purim story, the story tape that came out when I was a little kid in the 80s, he cast lots on all of the months, but it's according to the Medrash. He went from month to month. Each month he found a chutz for the Yidden. It didn't work out for him, and he was growing desperate. He started from the first month in the Jewish calendar. He started from the month of Nisan, and here he already reached the last month, and he still didn't succeed. Every month he said is not going to be successful to kill the Yidden in that month. Here he was on the last one, and he found good, and the lots came out to Adar, and over here he became full of excitement and happiness. Omar, he said, my lots fell in the month in which Moshe Rabbeinu died, and he saw that as a bad omen for the Yidden, that this is a cursed month for the Yidden, because that's when their leader Moshe Rabbeinu passed away. However, he was unaware that not on Taka, that on the seventh day of Adar, Moshe Rabbeinu passed away. However, on the seventh day of Adar is also the birthday of Moshe Rabbeinu, and that chus is what was going to save the Yidden from his decree. That's what it says in the Gemara. So according to this Gemara, we could have perhaps explained because the Nes of Purim fell because Purim, that the Nes of Purim was that Haman's lots fell to the month of Adar, which this was the month in which Moshe Rabbeinu, the savior of the Yidden, the one who redeemed them from Mitzrayim and saved them from the tyranny of Parai, was born, and therefore they will be saved in the schutz of Moshe Rabbeinu again from the tyranny of Haman. However, this explanation requires further explanation. We don't call the Yom Tov Adar or Moshe or something like that, which that would indicate that that's Taka the Nes over here, that it was the month in which Moshe Rabbeinu was born. We call the Yom Tov Ella Gam leaning up put mashma from this is it sounds like shaykhs the hanes lepur he lerak lezesh of lepur b'chedesh hadel legam leaning up put atzmi that the nest is actually connected to the girdle itself. The fact that there was a girdle, that is the main part of the nest. Not only that ikar nest mitzat pur hu girdle. The main part of the nest is mitzat this that the pur mitzat the girdle. The girdle in an Ayla B'Yesa Shemizanim Shechanes, and in one word, the Rebbe says, so what must be going on over here? The inyan of girdle is a very high inyan, like we'll see at length later in the Maimon. The inyan of girdle is a very high inyan because we had during the time of Purim the inyan of a girdle, so from this came about the Nes, and that's why it's called Purim, because the Nes came about from this very high idea and concept of a girdle. And this that the Pur came out, that the girdle fell in the month in which Moshe Rabbeinu, the savior of the Yidden, was born. It's actually merely an outcome of the fact that in Purim we had this idea of girdle. Okay, so there starts the Maimer by saying that Purim has a very interesting name. There's so much to talk about Purim. In other places, the Rebbe talks about the fact that we don't call Purim Geidalis. Let us call it Geidal. The Megillah itself has to tell us, Kein Karu Purim, Al Shem HaPur, Hu HaGeidal. If you're wondering, as a Yid who doesn't speak Persian, or whatever the language over there was, what is Purim? Hu HaGeidal. So we give it the name, Dafka in the Lashon, in a Goyish language. That's a Fabrengen for a different time. So the Rebbe says that it's an interesting name. It's an interesting name, Purim. Even more so because it must express the idea of the Nes. What was the Nes? And the Rebbe point says that we must say that this was the Nes. The Geidel was the Nes. What does it mean the Geidel was the Nes? That we'll get to later. But the Geidel was the Nes. That's the beginning of the Maimon. For Yuvin says so to understand what does it mean that the Geidel was the Nes. According to what's explained in Torah, the Purim Yom Kippurim sheyachim zelazeh, that Purim and Yom Kippur are connected to each other. The Pirush Yom Kippurim, what does Yom Kippurim mean? Who Kamoi Purim? That Yom Kippur is like Purim. The kaf is for Kamoi Purim. The Yisayim Mizu furthermore, the Mizesh Yom Kippurim Hu Kippurim b'chafadim and b'vad. From this, that Yom Kippur is only like Purim. It's only similar to Purim. We have Muchach, we understand Shapurim Hu Naila Yeser Miyem Kippurim. We see from this that Purim is even higher than Yom Kippur. And see in Arda 10, Ulahayr Mehadeya Shakala Maidim Asinim Libatal Gam Yom Kippurim La'ashidavai, which will be immediately in our times now, when all of the Yom Tovim will be battled, including Yom Kippur, Chutz Mi Purim, except from Purim. So from this we see that Purim is even higher than Yom Kippur. Okay. So Purim and Yom Kippur are connected to each other. They're the same idea. They're the same concept. However, amongst the two, Purim is higher than Yom Kippur. What's the connection between Yom Kippur and Purim? There's two connections we'll see in a moment. The first connection is that they both have them the idea of a raffle of lots. What's the difference between raffle and lots? I'm not sure if this is Meduic according to the English language. It's not something that we do these days anymore, but like we'll see also in the next paragraph. Now the only raffle that we know of is, a teacher wants to make a raffle in his class. Who's going to get the prize? Or the lottery, right? Those types of things. But lots,
yeah, the lottery is a more greater number than what's the word we use?
Than a raffle.
Than a raffle.
Yeah,
a raffle can be within the context of 30 kids in the class. Let's make a raffle.
Yeah,
so
but lots.
It's 1 out of 30. But in a lottery, you have 1 out of 500 million.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky. So over there, it shows you that only Hashem can be involved because He's the infinite. There's no number you can put in front of Him that would scare Him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, okay, it's a cute fish. But again, we're talking about lots, not lotteries. So people used to cast lots when they weren't sure.
The word lottery comes from lots.
It's not. This is not the lashon of Torah.
What?
Lottery.
No, it's an English word for lots.
What's the old concept of lots? The old concept of lots is something else. Is that when people weren't sure what to do, They would cast a lot between the two options. What should I do? It's not, I need to choose a winner. It's just the way we know it now. When somebody wasn't sure, was undecided what to do, so you cast a lot. That's the idea. When he says Gödel over here, he's talking about that concept of Gödel, that we're not sure what to do, so we cast a lot. Okay, so on Yom Kippur, you had the idea of a Gödel, of a lot. That what? You had two Seirim, and Al Pi Halacha, they both had to be this equal. They had to be the same size, the same. They had to look the same height, and cost the same, be worth the same amount of money. And how are they going to choose between these two goats? So they cast lots between them. Which one should go to Azazel, and which one should be brought as a carbon to the Eibishter? The Gam Purim, and also Purim al Shema Purim Ha'Gedol. So there we have our first connection between Purim and Yom Kippur, and in both of them you have this idea of a Gedol. You have lots. Another.
Yeah, and these things you can't challenge the approach with a bias. You can't say, "Oh, it was fixed." No, that the whole point is that it cannot be fixed. It's mamish chance.
Can I get to what are you talking about?
No, when you say you want to know which goats should go out there, so there's no, you can't challenge the Kohanim with bias. So you wanted that one, and you made a trick ahead. No, there's no bias.
Okay, but
it's dafka chance.
Right. But that's, it makes it sound random. We'll soon see in a moment that it's not that idea of a girdle is not random.
Random inside us, inside Hashem.
Right.
He can see if you gave him a trillion choices, he knows exactly what's going on. Okay, that's it.
So let's see how it comes together. Deborah's going to get into it. Another connection between Purim and Yom Kippur is they are both come from a place that's higher than Shem Havaya. But again, Yom Kippur, it says in the pasuk that Lifnei Hashem Titaru, you will become pure before Hashem. And in Pnimis we touch Lifnei Hashem, that the kapara comes from a place that's higher than Shem Havaya. The Gavin Gela Purim Yudua, and also when you get to Purim, it's known. The reason why the Shem Hashem is not mentioned in the entire Megillah, it's the only sefer in Tanakh, I believe, where Shem Hashem is not mentioned. Because in Purim you have the revelation of the infinite light of the Eibishter, and that's the infinite light of the Eibishter that's even higher than Shem Havaya. And since everything in Purim is going on, comes from a place that's higher than Shem Havaya, so we don't mention Shem Havaya because what's happening there is higher than that. So those are the two connections between Purim and Yom Kippur. The first connection being that in both of them you have the ending of a Gedol, of lots, and the second one being that they're both higher than Shem Havaya. Okay. And to explain what these two ideas are and why are they both similar. Why are Yom Kippur and Purim connected with these two ideas? It's not just two separate things. It's actually a very interrelated idea. First, let's talk about lots, like you were just mentioning. What's the inyan of a gedol? That it's higher than seichel. In other words, when somebody has two options and he wants to evaluate which one to take, so there's two ways he can do it. He can either consider both options, and then he'll say, seichel dictates that I should take this option. This is the one I should do. But what if he's looking at both options and his seichel dictates that they're both equal, that they're both the same? Now what's he going to do? He's stuck. How is he going to choose between the two equal ideas? And the answer is that he'll cast lots. When you have no choice, when seichel tells you that they're both the same, so you cast lots. So the idea of a gedol is that it's a decision that's made from a place that's higher than seichel. Rebbe is going to explain. Gedol in general is done with two equal things. See, it's interesting in 119. Nobody's going to stop you from casting lots when you get to two things that aren't equal.
Right.
So even though then the seichel dictates that you must choose the better option, but still the person could choose to cast a lot and choose even the less good option. Why? Sometimes a person decides that what am I going to want? I don't want to want now according to seichel. Even if seichel has an opinion, even if seichel has what to say, I don't want to choose based on seichel. I want this to be something beyond seichel, and therefore I'm going to choose by casting lots. Okay. Let's go weiter in the Pnim. Just like the two goats of Yom Kippur, which had to be equal in their look and in their height, or in their build and in their value. One of them are better in Makom L'Geidel. There's no place for a Geidel besides for that exception that we read about in the Hara, but it doesn't make sense to do a Geidel. You have a more normal way, let's say, or a more regular way of choosing between them, which is do what your seichel says. Many people don't like to do that, but anyways, we'll soon have in Hilchos Kechavim that a person is not allowed to make decisions based on what he thinks is right, and instead he has to follow what it says in Torah. And you can't decide on your own what it says in Torah. You have to let Torah tell you, what's right and what's wrong. Yeah, but the Rambam doesn't mention that explicitly. The Rambam says why? Because not everybody knows how to think. Not everybody knows how to. Somebody once told me, it was a coworker, and I used to work in a company with Geisha workers, so he told me, he doesn't agree with Aristotle. He doesn't like Aristotle's conclusion. Whatever. I wasn't interested in talking, but I could have asked him, do you understand the reasons that led Aristotle to, before you say you don't like his conclusion, whichever conclusion it was, I don't remember, it wasn't that interesting a conversation, but whichever conclusion you don't agree with Aristotle, let's say, this guy, whoever he is, he doesn't agree. Do you know the reasons? Do you understand the rules of logic and seichel that Aristotle applied that led him to this conclusion before you're saying that you disagree with him? Rambam says that there are rules of how to think, and not everybody knows those rules, and not everybody knows how to apply those rules, and therefore people come to the wrong conclusion. The normal way of doing things is to evaluate things and to see what seichel says to do, and it's only when seichel can't decide, when both of the options are equal. Since mitzad seichel, mitzad rational reasoning, it's impossible to choose, to decide which one should be chosen. So then you rely on geirel, which is higher than seichel, which comes from ratzon. Why is it higher than seichel? You could ask. It's random. It's not random. So over here, the person made his ratzon. He decided. He chose. He said, "I'm going to do whatever the geirel does." So this is from a place that's beyond reason. Right. I decided that I'm going to do this one.
It's random. It's not you. But the one who's really running the show, it's not random.
That we're going to get to that. You have to hold that thought until the end of the Maimer.
I'm saying it. Okay, that's what it is.
But I'm asking Benegeh to you. Benegeh to the person. Why are we saying? Because the Rebbe over here isn't talking about the Nimshal. Over here, they was talking about the Mashal. The Rebbe over here is talking about a person who makes a deal. And the Rebbe is saying this is L'mayla min ha-seichel. You can ask, why is it L'mayla min ha-seichel? Maybe it's L'mata min ha-seichel. Where do you say? I'm saying it's e-seichel.
Because you don't have no control over it.
That's why it's L'mayla min ha-seichel. How did it get?
The whole point of intellect is that you have control over the thing. And if you reach a point in your thinking where you don't have control over it, so then you got something over there. Because simply that seichel gives you control over the reality in front of you. But then you realize that, oh, you know what, this and this might happen, that and that might happen. So then you realize that the seichel is limited, that it can only, and the taket is random. We don't know what tomorrow is going to bring.
You're explaining that seichel is limited, but you're not explaining why randomly choosing something is higher than seichel.
Because of the fact there was no intellect involved in it.
The lack of intellect, the fact that an animal doesn't have intellect means that the animal is higher than seichel. It's lower than seichel.
It's lower than seichel, but the randomness that an animal, if you're walking along the jungle and minding your own business, the randomness states that, you probably will get attacked by a lion.
That's seichel. That's first of all. Second of all, the question over here is, why is a geirel considered to be higher than seichel? It's a random choice. How does that make it be higher than seichel? What I'm trying to explain, when the person decides that he's going to do based on what the geirel comes out, why are we calling it in the muscle? We're calling it an activity, a behavior that's higher than seichel. And
You have no control over it.
that does a house falls. The person had no control over it. That makes it higher than seichel than a house fell.
Yeah, until you figure out the reason why the house fell, and let's say you don't figure out the reason.
It's higher than
It's
seichel.
l'matam and seichel.
No,
Because
it's
they
higher than
didn't
seichel.
use seichel to build
You
it.
can't figure out why the house fell.
I think at the very least you could say it's not seichel. If you want to say that it's not l'matam and seichel, fine. But what makes it higher? Why higher? Why? Because it's not rational. By default, anything that's not rational. Let me ask you something. Somebody who behaves irrationally. For example, the Meshuggah who's institutionalized. He's behaving irrationally. So it means he's behaving higher than Seichel? The fact that there's no Seichel doesn't mean by default that you're behaving higher than Seichel.
No, what they're talking about over here, choosing something. We're not talking about.
Oh, so that's a different story.
Yeah, we're talking about choosing something. We're not talking about the fact that the person's in Michigan.
I'm saying fine, but he didn't choose based on Seichel. Why is this? Why is casting lots higher than Seichel? What about it in the muscle? What about it is higher than Seichel in the human behavior? It's saying that there's no way for Seichel to decide this. We're going to decide it randomly, you could argue. Al Kapanim, we'll leave it at that. But Bepashtus, the explanation is that the person, why is he choosing based on Seichel? The person says, you know what, I can't make up my mind over here. I don't know what to do. I'm going to make a choice. His Ratzon, he decided. Why is he following what the lots, how the lots fell? Because he decided. He decided that he's going to choose whatever the lot says. So I decided this is the meaning of Ratzon, which Ratzon comes from me. It's not because my Seichel forces me to do anything. It's because I decided to do it. And that's why the Indian of deciding based on Gödel is higher than Seichel, because it comes from my decision to do whatever the Gödel says. Okay, we could agree with that.
Yeah, it's higher than Seichel because you're leaving Seichel out of the picture.
Because you chose based on what I want, not based on what Seichel tells me to do.
Right.
Okay.
So we can sense that Ratzon is higher than Seichel.
100%.
Oh, that's it.
100%. That's it. Yes. Okay. Now, Valder Zahula, similarly, it is Lamaila, what goes on in the Elamisalianim and Kivyachal by the Gödel. When you say that you have this level, Lamaila called Gödel, because everything that exists in this world, including the concept of lots, is because it comes from Lamaila. Nothing can exist here if the idea doesn't exist Lamaila. So you have this thing, Lamaila called lots, Gödel. And the idea of Gödel, who Lamaila mehishtalshlus. Gödel is higher, than Seder Ishtalshlus. Like he says, the Chachma Hireshis HaIshtalshlus, Chachma, which is the highest faculty within intellect, is Chachma, and that is the beginning of the Seder Ishtalshlus. But Gödel, Shulamaila me'achachma, Ulamaila me'ishtalshlus. Gödel, which is even higher than Chachma, so it's higher than the highest level of Ishtalshlus, so obviously it's higher than Ishtalshlus.
Seder Ishtalshlus starts, that's a Sviris.
Start with Chachma.
Which is Al Pi Seichel. Right. So once you're not using Seichel, so you're not going in the Seder Ishtalshlus, so you're going higher than Ishtalshlus.
Yeah. Or if you're higher than Chachma, you're higher than Ishtalshlus.
Yeah. So that's the Malam and Seichel.
Yeah. So now we can see the connection between these two ideas, that Purim and Yom Kippur are similar in these two ideas, that they're both idea of lots and that they're both higher than Shem Havaya. So now we see a connection between this idea that it's the meaning of Gödel and that it's higher than Shem Havaya. Because both in Yom Kippur and in Purim, you have a revelation of Ein Sof which is higher than Ishtalshlus. Havaya represents is idea of Seder Ishtalshlus, like it says in Sifrei Kabbalah that Yud is a reference to Chachma, Hey is corresponds to Bina. So Chachma, Bina, etc. Those are all madrigas and Seder Ishtalshlus. And this that Yom Kippur and Purim are higher than Shem Havaya is another way of saying that the Gilui is higher than Ishtalshlus, and Gödel is also another way of saying that the Gilui is higher than Ishtalshlus. So that both the idea of higher than Shem Havaya and the idea of Gödel is that we're dealing over here with something that's higher than Ishtalshlus. And Purim and Yom Kippur are similar in the sense that both of them are dealing with something and they come from a place that's higher than Seder Ishtalshlus. Okay? So what we established in Eis Beis is that Purim is higher than Seder Ishtalshlus. It comes from Ein Sof Shalamayla Me'ishtalshlus. Similar to Yom Kippur. And now we're going to see that actually amongst the two, Purim is higher than Yom Kippur. going to take a little bit to get to that. Okay. However, and this I can't explain in the mashal, but in the nimshal we'll see what it means. It's known in the Maila of the Geidel that a Geidel is actually not only higher than Seichel, Geidel is actually also higher than Ratzon. Actually, according to the end of the Maimar, you can understand very well in the mashal also, but we'll leave it for later. Geidel is higher not only than Ratzon, it's actually higher. It's not only higher than Seichel, it's higher than Ratzon.
Explains
Yeah.
that because up Seichel you have to choose X.
Mm-hmm.
And now, because you're using the Geidel, you're being mevatel the Sprida,
Not the
which is
Bechira.
Alpidas,
Right.
and you're doing only the way the Geidel is going to tell you, which is against Das, which is higher.
Which shows that it's higher. Yeah. But over here is being based. That's also higher than Ratzon.
Than the Ratzon from the Seichel.
No, than Ratzon.
It's
It's higher also than Ratzon. So Geidel is also higher than Ratzon. When a person here, that actually explains right here.
Is Ratzon usually connected to Kesser?
Yes, Chitzenius Kesser. We're actually going to talk about it probably next year. So when a person casts lots who machlit the k'meishi yipol hageidol kein yeretzene. He decides actually, it's actually an inyan of choice. He decided. He made a bechira, he made a choice over here. I don't know what I want. Before we got to this point, how did we understand it in Beis? In Beis, we understood why is Geidel higher than Seichel? Because the person says that I want that whatever the Geidel tells me. Right? So in other words, we associated Geidel with Ratzon. But over here, the Rebbe points out a deeper subtlety over here, that I don't even know what I want. I didn't decide yet which one I want. I can't choose between the two. What do I want itself will be determined based on the Geidel.
You're tapping into, it's not about you anymore.
No. That's not the person. We're still talking about the person. No. We'll get to the Eibishter. First us. So again, in Eis Beis, what did we understand? We understood that Geidel is higher than Seichel. And what is it? It's on the level of Ratzon. That the Geidel determines what that the Geidel is my Ratzon. I'm struggling a little bit to lay it out. Maybe before next year we'll get back to it. But we associated Geidel with Ratzon. Let's leave it at that. Okay. Now, but what he's saying over here is think about the details of the story. The person has two options in front of him. Since his seichel can't differentiate, there is no difference. His seichel positively determined that they're both exactly the same. Therefore, I can't want one of them over the other. I can't want one of them over the other because they're both exactly the same. But I need to want one of them. I need to choose one of them. I need to want one of them. Otherwise, I can't. You got to take care of things. I have two cars over here. They're both exactly the same. Which one do I want? They're both the same good. I need to get a car. I can't just not decide. So what's going to determine my Ratzon, which one I want? The Geidel will decide which one I want. So actually, Geidel determines Ratzon. Geidel doesn't only determine Seichel. Geidel determines Ratzon, what my Ratzon is going to be. Who's the one who gave Geidel this power? The person.
Yeah.
The person said that I will do according to what the Geidel says. So someplace deep that within the person that's deeper even than Ratzon, that's higher than even Ratzon, is what Geidel is. And that's why it can decide what my Ratzon is going to be. Never mind to make the decision instead of Seichel. Okay? So it says that Ratzon is even higher, that Geidel is even higher than Ratzon. And so too it is when it gets in of Geidel l'mayla. The idea of Geidel actually reaches the Baal HaRatzon, the person from whom the Ratzon comes from, the person who owns the Ratzon, to whom the Ratzon belongs to, which the person is even higher than his Ratzon. According to this, that we're saying that Geidel is even higher than Ratzon. It comes from the Baal HaRatzon, so we could say that the connection between the two concepts in which Yom Kippur and Purim are similar, which namely, who the beginning of Shem Havaya, if you start writing out Shem Havaya, the very beginning of the writing will be the period, the dot that's made when the quill hits the parchment and starts writing out the Yud. So there's the kaitz right on top of the Yud, which is the very beginning of writing out the small letter of Yud. And this hints to it, it shows on, it indicates the level of Ratzon, which is even higher than Chachma. So if we said before that the Yud of Shem Havaya is Chachma, the kaitz of the Yud is Ratzon. So now in Shem Havaya, we also include the Madrega of Ratzon. So when we say that the Geidel is higher than Shem Havaya, what we're saying is that the Geidel is higher also than Ratzon.
When we say Balaratzon, we're going on Tzmusa.
Let's first start with the person. When we're saying the Balaratzon is for the person, right? In other words, I am higher than my Ratzon.
Balaratzon is the.
We're gonna. The topic of this Maimon is to arrive at just what do we mean when we say it. So we'll see at the end of the Maimon Mitzvah Hashem what do we mean. But let's just say for now that it's the Balaratzon. Let's just leave it. Himself. Yeah, or by the Eibishter, you could say the Eibishter who has the Ratzon. What do we mean when we say the Eibishter? Are we talking about Atzmas already? We'll see. That's the point. We're going to get to that at the end of the Maimon Mitzvah. So but the one to whom the Ratzon belongs to, that's where we're reaching. And on Purim, we draw down and we reveal the Baal HaRatzon, which is higher than the Dega of Ratzon, and that's the Inyan of Geidel. Okay, so if we started off the Maimer saying that Purim is the Inyan of Geidel, and that Geidel is the Inyan of Ein Sof, which is higher than Havaya, which initially we understood to be Ratzon, by the end of Eis Gimel, we understand already that we're talking about a level in Ein Sof that's even higher than Ratzon. And that's the Gilui, that's the revelation that we have on Purim. On Purim, you have the Gilui of a Madega that's even higher than Ratzon. So if we say in general that to have anything higher than Ishtalshalos is very uncommon and is very high, over here we're saying that it's not only higher than Seder Ishtalshalos, it's higher than the Madrega of Ratzon, which is already higher than Seder Ishtalshalos. Okay, in order to make it to the end of the Maimer before Purim, we only have one more week. So the next to the end of the next page, we will read fast. With my apologies. According to this, we could explain the connection between the two meanings in Yom Kippur. The first meaning is the simple one, which we didn't mention yet. That a person gains atonement for his sins on Yom Kippur. That's the first explanation. And the second explanation is the one that we were talking about until now. We're skipping the parentheses. Because we want to get atonement for what? For mitzvahs, for transgressing Rahman al-Islam, the mitzvahs, if somebody did. Where do the mitzvahs come from? The idea of the mitzvahs is that it's the Ratzon of the Eibishter. If somebody transgresses the mitzvahs, he created a blemish in the Ratzon of the Eibishter. It can't self-heal. How's it gonna get fixed? The only way for it to heal is to reach higher than Ratzon itself. And that's the idea of reaching to the Baal HaRatzon. He could fix the Ratzon. He could cleanse the blemish from the Ratzon because he's higher than the Ratzon. And the Ratzon is in his hands, so to speak. So the idea of Yom Kippur is that it's the Inyan of Geidel, which is even higher than the Ratzon, it comes from Baal HaRatzon, like we just said in Gimel. And now we can understand how Yom Kippur can cleanse the blemishes that were created in Ratzon. Because Yom Kippur comes from a place that's higher than Ratzon, which can cleanse the Ratzon. Just like on Purim, we have the Hamshach from the Baal HaRatzon, we also have that on Yom Kippur. Okay, so if you notice already from the phrasing of the Rebbe, it comes out that Purim is higher than Yom Kippur. In Purim, the Rebbe is going to say it soon explicitly. In Purim, you have the true revelation of the Baal HaRatzon. Yom Kippur, similar to Purim, also has a dimension of the revelation of the Baal HaRatzon. But the true revelation of the Baal HaRatzon is Dafka Purim. And that's why Purim is higher, like we're going to see in Ha'ara 26. In Purim, you have the atonement for sins. Which sins were atoned on Purim? No. Let's read Ha'ara 26. We're going to get a little clarity, and then we'll come back to the point. Yom Kippur doesn't forgive on anything, on everything. Like the Rebbe said, like the Rebbe says in the brackets, the Ba'avar al Krisis and Mrs. Bezdin. If somebody's aver on severe avedas, for which one is Chayiv Krisa or Mrs. Bezdin, so Gemar Kaparasi Holiday Yisurim. Yom Kippur doesn't complete the cleansing of his avedas. Stavka Yisurim. If somebody did something even more severe, which is Chilul Hashem, Gemar Kaparasi Holiday Misa. Even Yisurim don't completely cleanse his avedas. Only Misa cleanses his avedas. Look at Purim, even though what was their Aveda on Purim? That they took it pleasure. And like the Rebbe says, that what was the Aveda? That they took pleasure from the Suda of the Goy. Which this is, hold on, this is a very important point for now. We're going to have to end soon, but I feel we have to make this point. We're living in the age of Trump, as everybody knows.
Yes.
And Trump is somebody who does things, even though in his personal life, his mom's like a shikra guy, but
He doesn't drink at all.
Baruch Hashem, I'm ignorant about that fact. But the
Never
point
did,
is,
never did.
but the point is, without getting
Not
into
even in
it,
his
oh
youth.
boy, I see. You're not supposed to mention Trump, but I just felt it's
No, you're good.
I felt it's something that's negaya. It's very, very negaya, very, very negaya for us to understand this nekuda. However, we support him 100%. Just like the Alter Rebbe supported the Tsar. He even sent his Chassidim, his Chassid Moshe Meislish, and put his life in danger to support the Tsar. The Alter Rebbe ran away, abandoning his city, burning his house, taking all of his Chassidim with him, ran away from Napoleon to remain under the rule of the Tsar. Yeah? That doesn't make the Alter Rebbe a fan of the Tsar. He wasn't a fan of the Tsar.
He did what he had to do.
The Tsar, the Alter Rebbe, the Mittler Rebbe explains in a long letter to Moshe Meislish what the Alter Rebbe explained the Mittler Rebbe, why he was so eager and supportive of the Tsar, because the Tsar represented somebody who believes that there's a higher power. This is Mamish Bekitz, it's a beautiful letter. The Tsar represents somebody who believes in a higher power. A Christian, so he doesn't believe, he has it all wrong, but he believes that there is a God that's on top of him and that he must serve him. And Napoleon's whole idea, the whole atheism that we have now came from Napoleon. Napoleon's whole idea, who spread it? The ideas existed before him, but who brought it to the whole world? Who made the whole Europe atheist?
He was anti-monarchy, that's it.
Okay, fine. Hatman HaMachlekes, what was Napoleon? It's not for now, obviously.
He was anti-monarchy.
The Nakuda is that Napoleon represented, this according to the Mittler Rebbe's letter to Moshe Meislish, Napoleon represented somebody who does not believe in a higher power. So,
by the way, what democracy that we have today is inherited from Napoleon.
No.
He spread.
Based on Judeo-Christian.
He spread the whole idea of non-monarchy, and that's why America got the guts to revolt against England. That's
America came before, if I'm not mistaken.
No.
Anyways, it doesn't matter. The point is that I gotta go, and I want to make a point over here that I believe is a very important point for now, a very, very important point for our days. So, because Napoleon represented somebody who says there is no higher power, I myself am the power unto myself. That was why the Alter Rebbe fought so hardly against Napoleon. Okay, so al derech zeh, Trump is somebody who believes in the Eibishter, and not like the other ones who pay lip service to it. He says that he wants to make decisions based on what's ethical and moral, based on what the Eibishter says is ethical and moral. He states so clearly, and not only he states so, he follows through in actions. And Kamuvin, somebody who's ethics and morality is based on what the Eibishter says is good for the Yidden. And B'Poel Mamish, he's good for the Yidden.
Yeah.
And that's why we support him, even though we're not fans of his. And this is the Nakuda of Nenu Misudasa Shalei Rasha. Deb asks, what was the big Aveir of the Yidden in Purim? What was the big Aveir of the Yidden that brought about the Gzeira of Purim? They went to a meal. I mean, like for this Kloya Yavad in the end of the story, the Rebbe says you have to pay. Listen to what the Rebbe says. Listen to what the Rebbe says. The Rebbe says you have to pay close attention to the words of the Gemara. They took pleasure in the fact that they were invited by the Goy to this Suda. They walked around in the street and they bragged and they said, "You know why I'm happy? You know what makes me special? Because that Goy gave me his blessing. That Goy invited me and he said, you know what? You're an important person." And they based their whole sense of importance, their whole sense of identity based on what that Goy said. And it was because of that, not because of the eating the treifa food, it was because of this nenu that they said, the Goy chose me, the Goy, now I feel like somebody.
All the food was under the badah.
Listen, there's a point from there, but hold on. We got to bring it to a close. I'm sorry, really sorry, but we got to bring it to a close. The same thing in our times. We support Trump because he's doing the right thing. He's doing what's good for the Yidden. But Chas v'Shalom, not to Melech, as he says. But Chas v'Shalom, we're not fans of his. With Chas v'Shalom, we don't say, "Oh, Baruch Hashem, everything is going to be good." You know why? Because Trump is the president.
The
Eibishter führt the Welt, and Trump doesn't make us feel good. We're happy to see things going right. We shouldn't make the same mistake of Nenu Misedasa Shalei Rasha to say, "Oh, see, Israel is okay now because Trump is supporting Israel." Chas v'Shalom v'chas v'Shalom. Even though, if you ever meet him, he should be told thank you. He should be told thank you. But that doesn't make you a fan of his.
We knew he was on the right track when he showed up at the oil. Okay.
He went to it's unbelievable. How did I forget that? I mean,
that's how we knew he
this
was
is
on
the beginning
right
of
track.
Pashtus. This is the beginning. This is the beginning of the nevuah that the Mashiach will teach the leaders of the nation. So far, the sitting president of Albania came to the oil. The sitting president of Argentina came to the oil.
Sure.
The sitting president.
He wants to become a Yid, but he said, "I can't because I know one man that keeps Shabbos."
And Trump, before he was president, came to the oil. And I won't be surprised, or I fully expect him to come to the oil as president. And this is
the Yidden from Persia with the whole thing with Purim, that their not a mistake, the Avera was that they did not care about the kingdom of the Beis Hamikdash being used at the Suda. That didn't bring a tear to their eye. That's
Shivim Panim L'Teira. I was saying what the Rebbe said.
No, the Rebbe speaks about that. That the kingdom of the Beis Hamikdash.
I was saying what the Rebbe speaks about in this Fabregan that I was talking about. That's Negeah to our days. Let's finish.
You don't even cry about here's the kingdom of the Beis Hamikdash in front of you. You don't even cry.
Right. Let's finish the Aro. Even though their sin was that they took pleasure from the soda of that Rasha, which was the worst type of Chilul Hashem. Is not mechaper, and mikol makom neskaper lehem gamzeh. They were forgiven even for this sin of Chilul Hashem. So Rabbi said Purim is coming. Rabbi said Purim is coming. If you take Yom Kippur seriously, then please don't make Purim into a day of I don't know what some people make it into. Zetzich havek zog lechaim kedabay lemeve adaita de nafshei. And take it seriously. This is whatever Yom Kippur gives you. Purim gives you more. There's a higher kapara. However, so there it says l'chura. This idea is already said in the Maimer of the Rebbe Maharash. It has to be that the cleansing of Purim is essentially higher. Even in the Aves that Yom Kippur is also mechaper, Purim does it in a higher way. How is that? So he says like this: Yom Kippur isn't mechaper unless a person does tshuva. However, the cleansing of the Averis in the days of Purim comes without tshuva. It's a day of simcha.
And the kapara comes through simcha.
I don't know if that's the idea over here. It's definitely spoken about in other places. You have to look at it in Torah if he says that. In the Pnimit, you can't see it in the Asias, but it could be in Torah. Have a look. Because like I mentioned before, reading the Rebbe's words, that the main time when we have the hamshacha of this very high level of Baal HaRatzon is actually not in Yom Kippur, it's actually on Purim. The Hayamim Asvam Nikroim B'Shem Purim Al Shem HaPurim, the days themselves are called Purim because they are the idea of Gedol, they are the idea of the Baal HaRatzon. V'lachein HaKapara Shais B'Mei Purim Ein B'Hagbalos. There are no limitations to the kapara that was given on Purim, and that's why it's mechaper on everything, even things that otherwise the person would need Yisurim plus mitzvah. Yom Kippur could be mechaper, Purim could be mechaper on that. Purim could clean that.
So it's more than Kippurim.
It's much higher than Purim.
Yeah.
It could be mechaper because it's without any limitations, because you have the revelation of the Baal HaRatzon. V'yem HaKippurim, hu Kippurim b'chafadim and b'van, and that's why Yom Kippur is only like Purim, but it doesn't quite reach the level of Purim. V'yem Kippurim mechaper eli matshuva, and Yom Kippur requires tshuva for kapara. So I don't know if Purim is the time to think about Avedas, but I'll call Purim also hachanav to get in the right mode of Purim and to understand the importance of Purim. Realize that this is the day when all Avedas are gone and cleansed. All right.